Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us here at the Retail Corner. I'm here with Mike Kiser. He is a expert over at Sailpoint that takes care of people when it comes to some of their most sensitive data, some of their most sensitive points. And Mike, thank you for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Cole. Thrilled to be here.
Cool. So for those of us that don't know, can you kind of walk us through Sailpoint a little bit and walk us through your history and kind of how you ended up at Sailpoint?
Sure. Sailpoint, what we do is we basically protect data, resources, everything in an organization via identity. Basically securing, knowing who has access to what and governing that access, making sure it reduces risk for the business. That's the really short version of that. My personal background, I've done a lot of things. I spent 16 years with IBM. So I did everything from verification to writing code. I spent about 5 or 6 years doing solution architecture for large-scale international enterprises. So I did a lot of traveling there. Wound up with Sailpoint, joining Sailpoint in 2015 when we were much smaller. It was great. And so these days, I do a lot of different things. I do a lot of strategy here for Sailpoint, saying, hey, here's where the industry is going. Here's where our customers are going to be. We probably want to be ahead of the curve doing these X, Y, and Z things. I also talk to analysts, and I also talk to my industry colleagues and try and develop industry standards. At my heart, I was a physics major. I have a theology degree. I'm basically an idealist in a lot of ways.
Like a Renaissance.
So, yeah, well, I don't know about that. But I have an ideal way things should work and try to make things better for real world people actually doing identity and real world things. And so
that's kind of what we like to do here at Retail Corners, because we're really boots on the ground. We like the idea of sharing ideas across platforms, because I personally believe that if something works in one industry, more than likely a version of it will work in ours. And so bringing that kind of into focus specifically for retail, and our listeners are kind of, they look for that secret sauce. They look for that to make sure that to know that they're doing the right thing within their companies. And so with everything in the news today, it's tough to kind of exactly focus on one section of retail, but I'd like to talk about kind of grocery stores a little bit. Maybe it's because I spend way more money there than I should nowadays, but and so with grocery stores and cybersecurity, usually those two things aren't in the same sentence. You don't think about cybersecurity when you're going to a grocery store, but they're evolving. I mean, even in my little town, there's rows upon rows of not only pickup but delivery and everything else like that through Walmart, and our Kroger is on board with all that and everything else like that. And so when it comes specifically to grocery stores, in cybersecurity, what are you seeing as kind of the threats? What are you seeing as, because that's an evolving market when it comes to cybersecurity.
It totally is, right? I do the same thing as a identity security professional. I drive my family and friends crazy because we'll be at the grocery store and I'll be like, this is probably a bad idea, or this is a good idea, or this is inconvenient. I think a lot of the way we do grocery shopping is changing. You kind of hinted at that, right? My family, my extended family, they don't go to the store at all anymore. They order completely online. They either have it delivered or picked up. Right. I mean, I personally like grocery stores, but then again, I'm not doing a whole week thing. I'm buying for dinner, and I like the in the moment thing. But I think, because of that, everything going digital just changes the attack surface. Like when I was growing up, because I'm of a certain age, not that old, but old enough to... I
wouldn't know anything about that, sir. I have no idea.
It was a different experience, right? You went and it was all in person, right? Checkbooks were commonplace. That's still digital, but I think the acceleration of how you pay is changing things. All that credit card information, all that personal data is online. And it's different not only because of what grocery stores are doing, but how you can use that information elsewhere, right? If I have that data about you, if I have not just your credit card number, but other background data on you. Now I can advertise to you, or I can exploit you, or I can more nefariously, I could attempt to break into the grocery store network or access those resources. And it's a weird environment because it's not like a bank. A bank is like, yeah, this is what we do. We're hyper vigilant. We're doing identity proofing all the time. Right, exactly. They're used to securing things. Grocery store, it's more like, hey, you want some milk, some eggs? You're not thinking about, is this a good idea? And you've got this like, depending on the time of year, you've got more additional seasonal employees coming in, or you've got the contractor guy coming into the store to reload the fridge, usually at night. There's a lot of people that are new that are intersecting. Not to mention the people who are facilitating those no delivery methods, right?
I'm an old loss prevention guy back when they actually called it loss prevention, and instead of asset protection. But third-party vendors were always kind of a weird thing to get your head around, because I mean, yeah, especially in a grocery store, you've got the guy from Coca-Cola coming in, you've got your liquor guy coming in, you've got your third-party baseball card guy restocking things. I even did an investigation one time where it was actually the person stocking the greeting cards. They would put out their greeting cards and then fill their boxes with stuff and then take their boxes smooth out. And so managing those third parties, managing those vendors and everything else like that, how are you guys wrapping your brain around that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because like I said, it's going online. It's one thing if they're coming into the store and refilling a freezer, right? That's kind of physical security. Make sure they're not just walking in messing with your frozen lasagna. But once it's online and inventories are online, now you're having to give some kind of access to those third-party supply chain kind of people. And so I would say, it's a set of things you do that wouldn't really be surprising when you think about it. Basically, trying to identify and establish who they actually are, proving who they are, and just ratcheting down that access, right? It means if they have to give access to critical systems, doing it in very, very narrow time windows, making sure you're baselining that stuff. Nothing that you wouldn't do in an ideal world with employees, to be honest, but employees need it so often that it's a little bit more wide open. So think of like establishing an authoritative source for that special class of identities.
Because I mistakenly thought that was the exposure, but the risk of exposure is so much higher when it comes to third party because of that. I mean, not only the back door to the store, but the back door to the server. So
yeah, and it's exposure of data, and also it's a double whammy, right? Because it's exposure to data, but it's also exposure to your core business. If your supply people don't vet their security model and they have something flawed and they let in somebody bad and they say, yeah, this person's okay, now they're in your system as well. But even if it's not a security thing, if the supply chain is disrupted, your business loses reputation by the second, right?
Yeah, I mean, we see that every day,
Right. It's not just a headline. It's a very tangible thing. Anytime I live in Austin, Texas, and anytime there is bad weather, we had a freeze 2 or 3 years ago. Anytime anything threatens, what do people do? They don't wrap their pipes. They don't, go pick up their children from school. No, they go to the store and they buy all the toilet paper and all the water. Right. And so if that isn't available, people feel insecure, whether it's right or not. And your reputation is so tied into that. Just being able to have availability where you need it, when you need it to meet that demand is kind of crazy.
So, I mean, all that inventory tracking, it all has to be obviously cloud-based and everything else like that. And so, like, are you seeing different risks with that level of cloud-based inventory tracking?
Yes, only because, again, disruption to the supply chain, and also there's a huge focus in many industries, and groceries not alone, of supply chain security. So thinking about if it's all online, then what how are my partners securing their environment? What libraries or open source things are we using in that infrastructure that we may or may not know about? How do we document just a whole chain to minimize risk, right? Because a lot of the vulnerabilities that we're seeing, or several of them anyway, are supply chain kind of things where, and I'm not talking grocery supply chain, I'm talking like software supply chain.
Sure.
But there's a library that has embedded vulnerabilities in it and no one knows about it until someone launches an attack, and now it's everywhere. And now it's not just one inventory system, but if it's like a point of sale attack, then how many stores do you have? How many point of sale units do you have? You have to update all of those, manage all of those. And people in the sidelines, like in a less distributed environment, can say, "Oh, you got a patch." But grocery stores should be like, that kind of industry. It's a significantly more of an investment.
Because it's called a chain for a reason, weakest link kind of thing. So,
right.
Okay, right. So all of this is, especially with grocery stores and everything else like that, it's kind of coming to the forefront that people are thinking about it. Is there any legislation or regulation that's being built around like this kind of vulnerability?
Yeah, for supply chain, CISA's done a lot in terms of software bill of materials, those kinds of efforts to make sure you know what's in your software, and secure by design initiatives also by CISA and the federal government here in the States. Then you have your default standard stuff, payment card industry, PCI compliance, those kinds of things to reduce your normal vulnerabilities. What's fascinating also is it's not just a traditional security vulnerability, it's also all the people that you have working, which we hinted at before, right? If think about someone that just started at a store someplace and they get an email or a call from someone that sounds just like their manager saying, "Hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. I know it's not in normal process, but you can trust me because this is me." With the availability of Gen AI and LLMs and the recreation of biometrics, whether it's video or audio, that is ratcheting up. Because what that does is the more people you have, especially if we talked about before, if they're seasonal workers or contract, whatever the vibe is, getting into their account, their credentials allows people to start making those lateral moves, right? And then the impact of that can be really significant, right? There's that one grocery store, I won't name by name, but in the past year, they had a ransomware attack because of some kind of compromise, presumably social engineering. They lost 500 out of 800 stores, had to go down for some period of time.
So what I was thinking with the social engineering and the everything else like that, it's large scale, it's the ransomware and everything else like that. But I remember coming into an email one time, and my store manager was so proud that she had emailed me afterwards that she said the city fire department called me last night at 8:00 and our license was going to expire if I didn't send them $1,000. And so I took care of it. I took it out of and I went to Walmart and Western Union it to them, or money ordered it to them. And I'm like,
oh, no.
Like, I know you thought you were doing the right thing, and I'm sure the other person on the other end of the line was like, "Oh, you're doing great," but it was heartbreaking to tell this person that she just.
Oh, you just lost $1,000. Yeah, I don't think you should file that expense report. So
you're supposed to do, but with human vulnerability and everything else like that within the supply chain, is there a difference to grocery stores? Is there because for like you said, for so long, grocery stores haven't been part of that conversation, and so is there an adoption piece there that's struggling?
I think that, like any organization, it's educating and maybe making people aware of it first and foremost, right? I think grocery stores face a unique challenge, especially because I don't think that's front of mind, right? Front of mind for grocery store employees is who's in front of me, how can I meet their needs, how can I make things more efficient, right? And so I think making everyone aware of even the potential of that happening is helpful, right? We do. I've seen organizations do, phishing tests and or not quite full on synthetic identity, phone calls or anything. That's a little
Yeah.
bit high end these days. But just making people more and more aware. I think grocery stores it's a unique issue though, right? Because all the distributed nature, like any retail organization, the distributed nature of it makes it more challenging, right? To
Okay.
get people to understand that their efforts impact everything upstream. And it's the caveat or the corollary to that is having something that can manage identity and do it quickly enough to enact change in the environment can help you address that risk as well. In other words, and or provide more efficiency. In other words, if you hire a bunch of contractors, I mean like temporary seasonal workers, not third-party suppliers, and it takes them a couple days to get hired and into the system and access to all the things they need to, that's just not going to help, right? That's a couple
Yeah.
days of downtime you're losing. But if you can bring them on or change people's roles and do it quickly enough, or if you have employee number 34 who is doing some really weird things that may not even at 3 a.m, but just like at 7 p.m. when they're not even working, maybe getting a notification about that and kicking them out or revoking access can save you some
Sure.
damage, especially if they're doing something weird like going through file by file and touching every file in a directory or something that's just not normal. Put it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
they should have something better to do than that. Yes. But
Right.
so
Exactly.
what is on, like, you guys are on the cutting edge, bleeding edge of technology right now. Like what
Yeah.
should people be looking out for? What's next?
Yeah, it's really funny because I talked about, people running where I live, people running to the grocery store. The local grocery store chain here where I live is so on the ball logistically in general and knowing what's coming that there is, I would say, if somehow they could be a candidate and run as like the organizer of the state government, people would be like, sold, like
I'm
in a
assuming that's
heartbeat.
HEB, but HEB doesn't.
Yeah. It's HEB. I was gonna let you decide. But yeah,
I think
HEB
we're
is
comfortable saying HEB does a great job of that kind of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it is. It is massively popular, right? And in a state where we've lost the power grid once or twice, like the idea of HEB running anything is like, yes, sign us up.
I'd be okay with that.
Right. So that also goes back to what we were saying before, right? Intersecting with people's lives, right? If HEB, it's like the the Whataburger or the Waffle House index of disaster
Oh
measurement. If
yeah,
HEB is still there, you're fine. Um, I digress. Things that are coming are a couple of things. One, some of them are lower scale, and some of them are higher scale. On the lower scale of things, think of digital payments from mobile devices.
okay,
The first wave of this is starting to roll through with proprietary NFC versions. Think of Apple Pay or Google Pay or
sure.
your credit card, which I will not show to camera, has those lines on it to do NFC near field payments. That's a different model, right?
Yeah,
That's a slightly different threat model to think about. Along with that, though, is coming digital wallets.
yeah,
This is coming in Europe in 2026. There are about 10 to 12 different states here in the United States that are working on digital driver's license and digital identification.
for sure.
Consuming that is going to be, it's coming at some point. Now, those wallets will have identities to prove, like, right now, if I bought a bottle of wine, what happens? Someone has to come over, look at me and say, well, obviously you're old, so you can buy this wine or whatever, right? But in the future, I could probably just like I'm paying with my credit card, I can pay with my phone and or prove my identity with my phone. And
Right.
that's pretty great. Also a benefit privacy wise, because if I show my driver's license to you, I'm over 18, but you also know exactly the day I'm born, my
All the other
address,
things.
I'm a donor, all that stuff, right? All we need is a claim saying, yeah, Kiser, Mike's allowed to, he's over 21 or whatever the limit is. So that's one thing, right? That's good and bad, that whole payment system, because now there is something bound to the device, which is nice, right? Think of skimmers at a gas station. Those won't work as efficiently anymore, because if you don't ever put it in, then those skimmers are kind of busted on that front, right? When it's tied to a biometric on a phone, that's a positive outcome, right? I don't think there are any skimmers at grocery stores, but I could be wrong,
Even I saw something the other day where there's actually like ammo vending machines, like bullets vending machines. And
oh yeah, I saw that headline. Yeah.
And
what's the story to that?
And it's a built-in app where you identify yourself, and like you lock down your identity, and then as you interact with the vending machine, it asks for a QR code from your phone, so it recognizes that piece. And I mean, yeah, that's something that needs to be kind of well regulated, but they're doing it well, I guess.
I mean, we clearly live in Texas.
Sure.
Also, right. I mean, it's like, that's what you do, right? That process of QR code exchanging is that form of digital identification I was talking about. It complies to a standard called verifiable credentials. And what this does is it lets an authority basically give you a digital version of something they are cryptographically asserting. So in the state of Texas, for instance, or not Texas yet, but at some point, Oklahoma, Arkansas, believe it or not, couple others, Colorado, you can get a digital driver's license, and basically it will not only prove your age or whatever, it'll do assertions about you. In other words, yes, this is a resident of this state, or yes, this person is over 21. You don't need the information, but the checking system, like a vending machine for whatever, can present a QR code saying, I need cryptographically provable proof of this about you before I give you access, right? That's pretty powerful. There's lots of applications for that. Another application for that would also be those third-party contractors. I walk into your store, right? How do I prove that I am employed by this beverage distributor company, and they've authorized me to go restock your store? Well, a lot of that's just by personal association these days.
Because he's wearing the shirt that has the logo on it. That's the reason that,
Right. And there's so many movies waiting to be made about someone just walking in. But here, I could present from my phone. I could walk into your store and from my phone exchange QR codes, and then I've proved that the distributor says, yes, Mike works for me, and he's authorized to restock not just your chain of stores, but this store in particular. And then I've got tracking, and so that's pretty powerful. Also for third-party worker supply kind of thing. If you're hiring from a third-party organization, you say, I need this many cashiers added for the next 2 weeks. They send them to you. They walk in the door. They show a QR code. No need for paperwork. It's all digital on the back end. That's efficient, and it's more secure, right? Another thing that's coming is something called the Shared Signals Framework. This is with OpenID, and this is relatively new. What this is, I'm going to use a lot of words, and then I'll explain what I mean. It's a stream-based way to share events in a pub/sub format about particular identities. Let me explain. Basically, you've got disparate systems in your organization, in grocery stores as well. Think of a VPN or a single sign-on or email or an identity management system. And what happens? They know something's going wrong, and what do? They hold on to that information and try and deal with it on their own. What they typically don't do is they don't say, hey, Kiser's a threat. You might want to know that I don't trust Mike anymore. You might want to do something. What this allows those different facilities to do is to share that information in near real time. So if I log in via single sign-on to your inventory management system, and then I'm also doing email on the side, and I do something weird in email or some other place, that other system can notify the single sign-on system saying, Mike is doing some crazy stuff. We're not gonna give you too much detail, don't worry about it, but we've revoked all of his live sessions over here, or we've suspended his account over here.
Yeah.
Now, the way the standard works is not to be prescriptive. In other words, it doesn't say you need to do X, Y, and Z, but it's basically an event that comes in now to your SSO or whoever else is listening for these types of events saying, oh, you revoked all Kiser sessions? I might want to raise his risk level. I might want to force him to re-authenticate or re-log in, or I might want to take all of his sessions away. What that does is in near real time, let us work together to enable things that are known like zero trust or zero standing privileges, those kinds of things. And now I don't have silos of information. Now I'm sharing information like I should have been from the beginning, because we're all working for the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
All these vendors should be serving that. And so that's emerging. There was an interop that we did this year in March. We're doing it in December between some large identity security vendors. So I would keep my eyes open for that as well, only because it's a shift to kind of real-time prevention from lateral movement and reducing access and other things. Just like if you walk someone out the door, right? You want to suspend all their accounts, right?
Right.
Or if you fire them and they're not in your store, they're actually online someplace, right? You terminate them, and ideally, whoever's managing your identities goes out, spends all the accounts, right?
Right.
But the way these systems, But the way these systems work, if that person has a browser session opened into your SSO, for instance, they have a token with a time to live that lets them be that person. And so this enables that system to go and revoke all those tokens that are sitting out there. And so if I terminate someone now, not only are their accounts suspended, but any live sessions they have as well should also get revoked.
I mean,
you think it works like that already, but it doesn't. So we're trying to fix that,
It's a good thing to fix.
Yeah,
And so, hey,
so
we're bumping up against our time limit here, and I have one question. I ask the same question to everybody, and I want to make sure that that I get a chance to talk to you about it. If you could go back to the very beginning of your career and give yourself advice, other than haberdashery, what advice would you give yourself, sir?
Don't accept where you are. The limits that you're putting on yourself or your expectations of what is possible or what you could be doing or not doing are probably self-imposed. So I would encourage myself to dream bigger, to not be afraid of taking more risk than I have. Things have worked out really well. I'm really enjoying what I do.
Yeah.
I think that people assume you need a particular set of training, or you need a certain background, or you need an education level, or a certain degree or a certification. None of that I've found to be true. Most of the people who are the best people in identity and in security, they had degrees in Spanish or biology, or there's a guy who runs a lot of the securing the voting system for Switzerland and does a lot of cybersecurity throughout the entire country of Switzerland, right? His degree is in medieval staticism. In other words, he did a PhD on this group of nuns in medieval Germany who benefited the community and had visions. That's his thesis, but he's a world leader in security. So all that to say, don't impose restrictions on yourself, I think would be said.
I think that's a beautiful idea. I like that idea. Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us, man. Mike, we'll have you on in a few months and kind of see what's evolved in the universe. Maybe talk about a different sector of the old retail. So,
sure thing. That'd be great. Thanks, Cole.
All right. Thanks again, sir.
If you would like to be featured on our podcast, please email us at podcast@retailcorner.live or visit our website, retailcorner.live. Looking forward to having you as our guest on our podcast, and thank you so much for listening.